2022, the US froze Russia's $300 billion in dollar reserves. It sounded like a victory, but it changed everything. Countries like China, India, and even Saudi Arabia started asking, what if the same happens to us? For decades, the world had no choice but to use dollars. But now, the world is quietly building an alternative. This isn't the fall of America, but it could be the end of the dollar's dominance. Here's how it started and where it's going. In the last episode, we discussed the rise of the dollar and how the dollar became the backbone of the global economy. Today, we're going to discuss a potential future fall of the dollar. For decades, the world ran on dollars. 90% of international trade, 60% of global reserves, and even oil prices depended on it. When sanctions hit Russia, it wasn't just a warning to Moscow, it was a warning to every nation. Dollar access is power, and that power can be weaponized. The world had never seen a G20 countries' financial system effectively frozen overnight. Historically, countries cut off from dollar collapsed. Venezuela lost 99% of its currency's value after being barred from dollar access. Iran's economy shrank by nearly a quarter due to oil sanctions. Cuba and North Korea survived only by isolation, unable to fully participate in global trade. But Russia didn't follow that path. Before sanctions hit, Moscow had amassed nearly $630 trillion in foreign reserves, including large amounts of gold and yuan, creating a cushion against dollar's shocks. And unlike Venezuela or Iran, Russia controls some of the most critical commodities in the world. It's the second largest oil exporter and the top gas supplier to Europe. These resources gave Moscow bargaining power, even when cut off from the SWIFT system. Russia banks pivoted quickly. They integrated with China's CIPS payment network, while domestic alternatives allowed trade to continue without the US dollars. Russia even demanded rubles for oil exports to some countries, creating a stable demand for its currency. The world realized something profound. The dollar can hurt you, but it doesn't always destroy you. Russia's survival sent a signal across the globe. Nations can build alternatives to the dollar system. China's digital yuan, or ECNY, was already being tested for cross-border transactions, allowing payments without dollars or SWIFT. India and the UAE launched a rupee dirham corridor, bypassing traditional Western-dominated channels. Even the EU developed quietly systems like Instex to maintain trade without relying solely on dollar. In the energy sector, a subtle revolution is underway. For decades, oil traded exclusively in the US dollars, largely due to deals with Saudi Arabia. Known as the petrodollar, it was the reason that kept the US dollar dominant. As we covered in the last video, that system effectively forced the world to hold dollars, giving America immense global leverage. But now, China is negotiating oil deals with Saudi and other Middle Eastern suppliers in yuan. For the first time in decades, the petrodollar faces a credible challenger. On top of that, BRICS nations are exploring a new shared currency, partially backed by commodities, like gold and energy, aiming to reduce dependence on fiat dollars. Each of these steps might seem small alone, but together, they mark the beginning of a quiet shift. The world is slowly preparing for a multipolar financial system. What once seemed impossible, trading oil without dollars, or conducting large-scale international commerce outside the US control, is now happening. The dollar's greatest strength, US global influence, has also become its weakness. Sanctions show the world that the dollar is not neutral, and allies ask, if America can freeze Russia, what stops it from freezing us? Inflation, US debts, and overprinting weaken trust further. The dollar's share from global reserve dropped from 71% in 1999 to under 58% today. The cracks aren't obvious on Wall Street, but from Beijing, Moscow, Riyadh, they're very clear. As the dollar's dominance starting to show cracks, some countries seize opportunities. Countries like China, Russia, India, and Brazil are quietly building systems that reduce their reliance on Washington. For Russia, using yuan or rupees allows it to bypass US sanctions. For China, promoting the digital yuan internationally strengthens its economic influence across Asia and Africa. Even smaller nations are paying attention. Turkey, for example, is exploring trading in local currencies with Russia and China to protect itself from dollar volatility. Gulf states, historically dependent on the petrodollar, are negotiating deals in other currencies, hedging against potential pressure from the US in the future. Beyond currency swaps, new payment systems are emerging. Alipay and WeChat Pay, China's dominant mobile platform payment systems, are being adapted for cross-border trade, allowing businesses to transact without the dollar. India's UPI system is being extended for international payments. Even digital wallets and blockchain platforms are quietly growing in Africa and the Middle East. This is more than just finance, it's geopolitics. By reducing reliance on dollar, these nations gain economic independence, stronger negotiation power, and buffer against potential sanctions. Western banks and global investors are noticing. Some are quietly supporting the alternative systems, while others are investing in digital currencies, preparing for a world where dollars are no longer the safe haven. And the result? Redistribution of power. The dollar still dominates today, but its grip is loosening. And the countries that adapt fast, building their own financial networks, are the ones that will benefit the most in the upcoming decades. Technological advances are also playing a role, with the rising demand for digital currencies, mobile wallets, and blockchain-based platforms. And the reliance on dollar for global trade is gradually diminishing. The decline, however, will not be sudden or dramatic. The dollar's dominance has been built over decades, and it will take time to reshape global financial systems. But the trajectory is clear, a shift towards a multipolar currency system. And what does this mean for America? Less control and less leverage. Global demand for dollar may drop, reducing the ability to print freely, and sanctions will not be as effective as they used to be. Allies will become more independent, but it's not all doom. The US can adapt. Digital dollars, stronger international economy, and cooperative trade relationships could maintain influence. Every year, a little less trade in dollars, a few more deals in yuan, rupees, or digital currencies. The dollar's dominance built a global empire, but that empire is changing. The age of American money is ending, and the next era, it's already begun. This is the end of today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you have more ideas for me to cover in the next episodes, leave it in the comments. Until next time.